We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You're listening to Carousel Sniper Victim, a Dead Glass Design production, with your host, Shaun Jeffery.
Well, there's simply no way of underestimating the fire threat Victoria is facing over the next 24 hours or so.
During Saturday, a gale-force north wind will combine with extreme heat, and that's not a good combination in terms of fire potential.
And fire authorities are warning the public to prepare for the worst.
It was a wall of flame that came up that mountain.
Slow down, slow down, slow down. Keep it going.
I remember holding Matilda in my arms, and I just thought she's just got to keep breathing.
Everything was on fire around us, literally everything in all directions in the 360 degrees that we could see.
He said, we're just stuffed. He said, there's no CFA. We're stuffed. We're completely surrounded. I said, can you get out? He said, we can't get out. We can't do anything.
I didn't know how long I could hang on, Just because I knew how bad it was up there, I thought there'd be no one coming up.
I'd never seen anything like this. And I freely admit I was terrified.
Watch 38 coming down here. Fires on the road already. Jasper, put the blanket up.
The temperature became torrid, and on the morning of the 6th of February, the air which blew down from the north resembled the breath of a furnace. A fierce wind arose, gathering strength and velocity from hour to hour, until about noon it blew with the violence of a tornado. By some inexplicable means, it wrapped the whole country in a sheet of flame. Fierce, awful, and irresistible. A quote from an unknown author. Black Thursday, February 6, 1851. Bushfires have long been a part of the Australian landscape. They've been a part of it for millions of years. But regardless of this fact, some of the worst bushfires will always stay burned into our collective minds. I personally remember when just up the hill from where I live, 56 homes were razed to the ground in the Parkerville bushfires of 2014. Or a few years before that, the entire escarpment across from where I live went up in flames, only to be held back at a containment line at the road at the bottom of the hill, about 150 metres away from the front door. Although bushfires have been a part of the Australian landscape for millions of years, more recently, they have delivered a significant amount of damage, and some far worse than others. Bushfires in Australia impact extensive areas, causing property damage, emotional heartache, and of course deaths. Since the mid-1800s, bushfires have accounted for the deaths of over 800 people in Australia. However, fire isn't all heartache and destruction. Some native Australian plants have evolved a variety of mechanisms to survive or even require bushfires, possessing epicormic shoots or lignotubers that sprout after a fire, or developing fire-resistant or fire-triggered seeds. Some native plants even encourage fire. Eucalypts contain flammable oils in the leaves. They use this as a way to eliminate competition from less fire-tolerant species. And also, for example, grass trees or Xanthorrhoea, which is a genus of about 30 species of flowering plants endemic to Australia. Following a fire, these plants will send up large flowering spikes to assist in procreation of the species. And it's not just some of the native flora that use fire to their advantage. It's some of the native fauna too. For example, firehawks. For thousands of years, Australia's Indigenous people have spoken about firehawk raptors that intentionally spread bushfires in order to corner their prey. Now, a new study has documented and confirmed the bizarre ritual of these firehawks, finding that at least 3 raptor species, quote, act as propagators of wildfire, end quote. According to the study, these firehawks, the bat kite, the whistling kite and the brown falcon, pick up smouldering grass and sticks from raging bushfires and transport them up to 1 kilometre away. The intent of these firehawk raptors is to spread fire to unburned locations. For example, the far side of a river, road or artificial break created by firefighters. They do this to flush out the prey via flames and smoke. Australia, a land where even our animals and trees try to kill us not only with poison or venom, but with arson. It's a beautiful, terrifying land, and we love it for it. For thousands of years, Indigenous Australians have used fire to clear grasslands for hunting and to clear tracks through dense vegetation. However, this was usually only in periods of high rainfall and in relatively small grassland zones bordering deserts or the coast. The food thus gained provided much needed protein to the mostly nomadic groups. The natural fire regime in Australia was abruptly altered by the arrival of European settlers. Fires became more frequent, and fire-loving species, notably eucalypts, greatly expanded their range. One paper suggested that the removal of mature trees since European settlement for grazing and construction, etc., may have triggered much more mid-level tree and shrub regeneration, resulting in higher mid-story cover and fire fuel hazards. Now, the word bushfire builds on the concept of the term the bush. This we use to refer to sparsely inhabited regions of Australia's vast countryside. Bushfires in Australia are generally defined as something that's uncontrolled, it's non-structural, and it burns in grass or scrub or bush, sometimes forested areas. Australia, being a geographically and meteorologically diverse continent, experiences many types of bushfires. There are, however, 2 main categories, depending again on local topography. Firstly, you have hilly, mountainous fires. These are fires that burn in hilly, mountainous or alpine areas, which are usually densely forested. The land is less accessible and therefore not conducive to agriculture. Thus, many of these densely forested areas have been saved from deforestation and are protected by national, state, and other parks. The steep terrain increases the speed and intensity of a firestorm in these mountainous fires. And then secondly, we have flat or grassland fires. These burn along flat plains or areas of relatively small undulation, predominantly covered in grasses or scrubland. These fires can move quickly, fanned by high winds in flat topography, and they quickly consume the small amounts of fuel or vegetation available. These fires pose less of a threat to settlements, and as they rarely sort of reach the same intensity seen in major firestorms, as the land is flat and the fires are easier to map and predict. Also, the terrain is more accessible for firefighting personnel. Bushfires can be triggered by natural causes, such as lightning, but more frequently they're caused by man-made events such as arcing from overhead power lines, or arson, accidental ignition in the course of agricultural clearing, grinding and welding, campfires, sparks from machinery, or even uncontrolled burns when they escape and break containment lines. Bushfires in Australia can occur all year round, though the severity and the, quote, bushfire season generally varies by region. These bushfire seasons are commonly grouped into years, such as right now we're in the 2019-2020 Australian bushfire season. They typically run from June of one year until May of the next year. In southeast Australia, bushfires tend to be most common and most severe during summer and autumn, which is December through to March, and also in drought years, and they're particularly severe in El Nino years. But I'm not going to go into what the El Nino weather cycle pattern is here. Just Google it. Now, the southeastern region of Australia is extremely fire prone. Its warm and dry conditions intensify the probability of fire. In northern Australia, bushfires usually occur during the dry season, which is April to September, and fire severity tends to be more associated with seasonal weather patterns. In the southwest, basically where I am, similarly, bushfires usually occur in the summer dry season, and the severity is usually related to seasonal growth and droughts and fuel loads, etc. During the fire season, the Bureau of Meteorology, which we in Australia call BOM, provides fire weather forecasts. Fire agencies determine the appropriate fire danger rating by considering the predicted weather, which includes everything from temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, and dryness of vegetation. These fire danger ratings are a feature of weather forecasts and alert the community to the actions they should take in preparation of the coming day. Ratings are broadcast via newspapers, radio, TV, but more commonly nowadays online. You just check it on your phone. In 2009, a standardised fire danger rating, or FDR, was adopted by all Australian states, and this new standardised rating included a whole new level: catastrophic fire danger. Now, the most devastating fires are usually preceded by record high temperatures, low relative humidity, and strong winds. This cocktail creates ideal conditions for the rapid spread of fire. In urban areas, it can be just as bad. Fine fuels such as mulch and timber decks and housing materials dry out in high heat and low humidity, which just helps feed the flames. Whilst New South Wales, Canberra, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania have all experienced some pretty devastating bushfires in recent years, it's Victoria, particularly in regions near Melbourne, that stand out as a hotbed for bushfire activity. Of the following list that I'm about to read, which details the deadliest fires to date in Australia, 4 of the 5 deadliest fires on record have all been in Victoria. The Black Thursday bushfire. These were a devastating series of fires that swept the state of Victoria on the 6th of February, 1851. 12 human lives were lost, along with 1 million sheep, thousands of cattle, and countless native animals. Then we had Black Sunday, from the 1st of Feb to the 10th of March 1926. Large areas of Gippsland caught fire, culminating in the fires on the 14th of February that killed 31 people in Warburton, near Melbourne. Over the next 2-month period, a total of 60 people were killed. Black Friday, 13th to the 20th of January, 1939. Drought conditions and weather shortages also preceded Black Friday, but the usual combination of high temperatures, strong winds and low humidity finally triggered fires throughout bush communities near Melbourne. And then well-meaning locals and graziers made the problem worse by trying to use controlled burns to protect themselves and their property from the coming disaster, only to see their good intentions help spread the flames. In all, 71 people were killed and 650 houses were destroyed. But it isn't always isolated to Victoria. Black Tuesday, 7th of February 1967, in Tasmania. An unusually abundant spring covered the Tasmanian forest floors with litter, providing excess fuel for the bushfire season. Strong northerly winds and high temperatures coupled to help fuel at least 80 different fires across southern Tasmania, which swept over the southeast coast of the state and came within 2 kilometres of central Hobart. The fires killed 62 people and razed almost 1,300 homes to the ground. And then, Ash Wednesday, the 16th to the 18th of February, 1983. The Ash Wednesday bushfires, known in South Australia as Ash Wednesday 2, were a series of bushfires that occurred in southeastern Australia, which was Ash Wednesday on the 16th of February in the Christian calendar. Within 12 hours, more than 180 fires, lit mostly by accident, but also arson, spread rapidly through the scenic residential regions near Melbourne and Adelaide. Fanned by winds of up to 110 kilometres, 68 miles per hour, the fires caused widespread destruction across the states of Victoria and South Australia, resulting in the deaths of 75 people and the destruction of nearly 2,000 homes. Years of severe drought and extreme weather combined to create one of Australia's worst fire days in a century. The Ash Wednesday fires became the deadliest bushfire in Australia's history. That was, of course, until one blisteringly hot day in February of 2009. Saturday the 7th. A day when all Australians were shown just how deadly the consequences of an out-of-control bushfire can really be.
Fires were expected, but not a firestorm like this. It raged unchecked through the villages of Victoria, the searing heat literally vaporising buildings, livestock and people in its path. Australia had been braced for the worst, but few could imagine this. From the air, the scale of the destruction was apparent. whole communities wiped off the map. Where there were survivors, many were in shock, one seeking solace from Australia's Prime Minister.
Hell and all its fury has visited the good people of Victoria in the last 24 hours, and many good people now lie dead.
We travelled through the blackened bush to one of the areas where many had perished. All around, evidence of panic and devastation. An abandoned motorbike, and beyond the body of its rider, caught out as he tried to run away from the flames. Elsewhere, cars had careered into each other, the fate of their occupants unknown. Most of the houses in the town had been completely destroyed. Much of the small settlement of Kinglake is now a ghost town. Everywhere there's evidence of the haste with which residents were forced to leave. But the intensity of the heat meant many didn't make it, in what now appear to be the worst bushfires here for a generation. But the survivors here are few and far between. The fires have taken a deadly toll, the power of nature outstripping the power of mankind to defend itself.
A week before the fires that ravaged the Australian state of Victoria in 2009, a significant heatwave affected most of the southeastern regions of the continent. From the 28th to the 30th of January, Melbourne broke temperature records by experiencing 3 consecutive days above 43 degrees Celsius, 109 degrees Fahrenheit, with the temperature peaking at 45.1 degrees Celsius, or 113.2 Fahrenheit, on the 30th of January, the third hottest day in the city's history. The heatwave was caused by a slow-moving high-pressure system that settled over the Tasman Sea. That combined with an intense tropical low located off the northwest Australian coast and a monsoon trough over northern Australia. This whole cocktail produced ideal conditions for hot tropical air to be directed down over southeastern Australia. The February fires commenced on a day when several localities across the state, including Melbourne, recorded their highest temperatures since records began in 1859. On the 6th of February, 2009, the day before the fires started, the Premier of Victoria, John Brumby, issued a warning about the extreme weather conditions expected the next day. Quote, "It's just as bad a day as you can imagine, and on top of that, the state is just tinder dry. People need to exercise real common sense tomorrow." The Premier went on to state that it was expected to be the worst day of fire conditions in the history of Victoria. A total of 358 firefighting personnel, mainly from the Country Fire Authority, the CFA, and the Department of Sustainability and Environment, the DSE, were deployed across the state of Victoria on the evening of Friday, the 6th of February, in anticipation of the extreme weather conditions that would follow the next day. By mid-morning, on what would become known as Black Saturday, hot northwesterly winds in excess of 100 kilometres, 62 miles per hour, bore down on the state of Victoria, accompanied by extremely high temperatures and extremely low humidity. A total fire ban was declared for the entire state. And as the day progressed, the temperature climbed. Melbourne hit 46.4 degrees Celsius, 115.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which was at that time the hottest temperature ever recorded for the city. and humidity levels dropped to below 2%. Bone dry. Now in Australia, we use a system called the Macarthur Forest Fire Danger Index, the FFDI. This system was developed in the 1960s by CSIRO scientist A.G. Macarthur to measure the degree of danger of fire in Australian forests. The index combines a record of dryness based on rainfall and evaporation with meteorological variables for wind speed, temperature, and humidity. Now before Black Saturday, the index maxed out at 100. MacArthur used the conditions of the Black Friday fires of 1939 as his example of a 100 on the index. The Forest Fire Danger Index on Black Saturday reached much higher than the maximum value of 100 though. At such extremes, it's just meaningless to specify a particular value on the index. In these situations, any uncontrolled fire will spread so quickly that it presents a critical threat to life and safety. So to keep ahead of this critical threat to life and safety, there are certain systems in place. When a fire is located, the calls from the frontline responders are sent to the CFA Incident Control. Here, the authorities update the website and spread the vital information out to the media, and therefore to the public. People are encouraged to check either online with the Department of Sustainability and Environment's website, which updates all the current fires taking place within the state of Victoria, or in turn, listen to the designated state emergency radio station, the ABC.
ABC Radio, Bushfire Information.
And bringing you news of a third fire burning now under emergency conditions. Emergency warning for a bushfire burning under catastrophic weather conditions, and this has been issued for Port Wakefield Highway near Port Wakefield. You are in danger. Take shelter in a solid building. Do not leave or enter this area in a vehicle or on foot. It is too late to leave, as the roads will not be safe. Conditions are dangerous and firefighters are now unable to prevent that fire spreading. Shelter before the fire arrives, well before the flames reach you. The Swamp Road Beaufort fire is uncontrolled. The grass fire is burning in a southerly direction towards Port Wakefield and National Highway 1. And those conditions are continually changing. We are about to head to the news, but we will continue to bring you further information as soon as the news is finished, and hopefully bring you some greater detail about those particular fires. If you are in the area, we would appreciate any information you can bring us. Leanne on our text line has said smoke in Kilburn from the Wingfield dump fire. I hope that people who have respiratory issues can close their doors and windows and stay safe. And that is something we would echo as well. Stay listening on a battery-powered radio to ABC for further updates.
Around midday on Black Saturday, the system faced what would be its first major test. About an hour's drive north of Melbourne lies the town of Kilmore East. Around 11:45 a.m, winds that reached speed of more than 125 kilometres, 78 miles per hour, tore down a 2-kilometre, 1.2 mile section of poorly maintained power lines owned by SP AusNet in Kilmore East. These downed power lines would spark a bushfire that would become the deadliest and most intense firestorm so far experienced in Australia's post-1788 history.
The Kilmore East fire, you probably had less than 10 minutes, probably somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes from the time it ignited to the time it started. Now it seems as though it's probably been about 15 or 20 minutes before actually the fire authorities actually were aware of that fire, and then you have to actually get to the fire, and then you have to start working on it. So it was well beyond a suppressible stage by the time firefighting authorities were actually there.
At the time the Kilmore East fire began, it was nothing Australia hadn't seen before. It was burning out of control, but it was headed towards the Hume Highway. And this large stretch of open road would be enough to stop any regulation bushfire any day of the week. But there was nothing normal about this fire. The fire jumped the Hume Highway like it wasn't even there. Within minutes, fire crews could only stand by and watch as the fire moved uncontrollably across the 4-lane highway and spread further into the Australian bush.
Kevin from Kilmore East had just phoned. Hi, Kevin. Which fire are you? You're the Wandong.
The Kilmore East Wandong fire, but it started about 500 metres from my farm. And Wandong and Heathcote Junction, I believe, are going to be, they'll be singed. They've got to go on full alert, but there's no announcement saying that they've got to put their fire precautions in place. But it's the wind. I'm on top of my hill on the farm, and the wind's blowing at 80 to 100 kilometres an hour, and it's going to build up, and the fire trucks are not making any difference at all. So I don't know why Wandong and Heathcote Junction haven't been alerted, because they're so close.
The Kilmore East fire was fanned by extreme northwesterly winds, and within hours had travelled 50 kilometres, 31 miles, southeast in a narrow fire front through the areas of Wandong and Clonbinay into King Lake National Park. And things were only just getting warmed up. Eyewitnesses stated that the Murrindindi mill fire started at 2:55 p.m. However, this fire isn't ignited by fallen power lines like the Kilmore East fire, but rather some sick, twisted arsonist. This new fire was only 50 kilometres from the eastern edge of the Kilmore fire. If the winds changed, these two fires would merge, and the outcome would be catastrophic. But for now, the fire was raging towards a popular picnic ground, where several families lay right in its path. In minutes, they would be forced into the Murrindindi River, overcome by the heat of the flames and the choking, suffocating smoke.
You see the plume already within 10 minutes, it was big and black, and you see it was building. And a day like that with a strong wind, the smoke was laid over, and it's not a good sign. Yeah, and I knew straight away first attack wasn't going to be an option. Even if you had 100 tankers there, it wouldn't have mattered. I knew already, even before I got there.
I could just see this wall of flames just beside us. There wasn't bush anymore, there was just flames, that's it. And yeah, I just kept on driving as fast as I could until we ran into the DSE guys, at which point Josh told me to slow down because we'd passed the fire and it was all burnt, so we thought we'd be able to get out.
I look in the windows of these cars and there's kids. There's a lady holding a baby, and I was just, gee, where did these people come from? So I look back and there's horizontal flames across the road, and there's no way known we could get those people back the way we came. It was then that I decided to take a stand in the river and use the river as a refuge.
I remember holding Matilda in my arms, and I was just looking down at her while she's just laying there, and I'm trying to give her the bottle, and I just thought she's just got to keep breathing.
The kiddies, they were petrified. Every time I opened the door up, they were screaming. The adults, I think they were worried too. I could see it in their eyes.
No doctors, no ambulance, nothing could get in to help us if they suddenly stopped breathing from all the smoke.
There was heaps of embers. Embers are flying across probably as quick as a wind, probably 60, 80 kilometres an hour. You just hope that one of those big trees isn't going to come and clobber the whole lot of us that are standing in the river.
I did think that I would get out. I didn't think the kids would. I thought that I'm going to be here with the kids and they are going to die. And that's basically, yeah, that's what I thought.
By now, the catastrophe had well and truly begun. More than 10 separate fires were now raging across the state of Victoria, several intentionally lit. 9 major roads and highways had been closed. At Bunyip State Park, a fire burning there had jumped and breached its containment lines. At Churchill, fires were raging towards homes and families. The capital city of Victoria, Melbourne, had now been surrounded by fire on 3 sides.
The board literally lights up, and so you get fire after fire after fire breaking out, all in and around, generally speaking, 150 kilometres out of Melbourne. So you've got resources already heavily committed to Kilmore, to Bunyip, just being committed to Murrindindi, and we literally had at that point in time regions running out of fire trucks. Every single fire truck they had in their region, in our strongest capability, got depleted. Everything.
Stay on burn area, do not move. It's very dangerous to move out onto the road at the moment. Just stay in survival mode.
Stay in survival mode? That's an understatement. Jesus. It's coming straight at us. Just keep an eye on that. Doesn't hit the truck.
The Murrindindi mill fire burned southeast across the Black Range, parallel to the Kilmore East fire, towards Narberthon. Hell attacks and fixed-wing water bombers did everything they could to attempt to suppress the flames, but nature had now taken over. Experienced air attack coordinator Shaun Lawler reported flame heights of, quote, at least 100 metres. When the fire front struck Narberthon, it was devastating. The fire destroyed 95% of the town. And then, at around 5:30 p.m, the worst possible scenario began to unfold. The wind changed. Hurricane-strength winds pushed the main fire front up the slopes of Mount Disappointment. Spot fires started to spring up ahead as chunks of bark and entire burning branches were hurled over 40 kilometres, 25 miles ahead of the fire front. Never before had such spotting distances been recorded anywhere. Fires were sprouting up 10, 20, 40 kilometres ahead of the fire front. People had literally nowhere to hide. These insanely powerful hurricane-strength winds resulted in ember attacks raining down on the town of Strathhuon. And the most tragic thing of all, the town hadn't even been notified that the fire was on the way. Not that they needed any notifications now. The fire was there. The emergency response system had now begun to collapse under the volume of traffic flowing in. Every possible first responding unit was already doing something somewhere. The whole of the state of Victoria was in damage control.
Strathhuon was in a valley downwind of this major ridge, the Sugarloaf Ridge. So the embers that were being launched from that Sugarloaf Ridge into the valley area below were basically acting like a cluster bomb. You really don't have anywhere much to go because, if you like, 10 kilometres in almost any direction is being lit up with fires. We had hundreds of fires starting and they were all starting to interact. So it's basically what we describe as being a firestorm.
And I turned round and I looked at the mountains, and the scene that confronted me was indescribable, because it was spotting through the mountains, and a spot would go to the size of a tennis court, then the size of a football oval, and then the timber in between would explode, the bush would explode, and you'd have this monster. And you'd look 5-6 kilometres to the east into Strathhill, and it was burning there, and no matter where I looked, there'd be a fire, and it was like something I'd never ever seen before, even though I've got a lot of experience. I'd never seen anything like this. And I freely admit I was terrified.
When the southerly change struck at around 5:30 p.m, it swept the Murrindindi mill fire towards the town of Marysville, but also towards the Kilmore East fire. What had been a long skinny line of fire burning in a southeasterly direction was now being forced by the wind to shift direction and become an enormous fire front stretching over 50 kilometres and now heading in a northeasterly direction, racing towards a whole new set of towns. Over the next few hours, the fire front would burn through King Lake, Steeles Creek, Dixon's Creek, Chum Creek, Tulangi, Hazeldean, Broadford, and Flowerdale. Essentially, the entire state of Victoria was systematically and devastatingly being overrun by a complete firestorm. Everyone was either impacted in a direct sense by flame or indirectly by smoke, fear, and panic. Late in the afternoon on Black Saturday, residents had anticipated that the fire front would actually bypass the small town of Marysville. But at about 5 p.m, just before the wind change, the town lost power. At around 5:30 p.m, the wind died away. However, minutes later, it returned from a different direction, bringing the fire up the valley with it.
When the embers started coming, it was like a hailstorm of embers coming across the top of the roof and landing on top of me, which is just coming down, just like hail, but it was embers. So I started, Danny yelled out, he said, the front's on fire, and I directed the hose over the roof into the front. And that didn't seem to be doing nothing. And that's when they said, you better get in the house. So I came racing, I just dropped the hose and raced into the house to help them in there. And by this time, Jen had blocked all the doorways up with wet towels. And the girls were laying down, the chamber girls, and Mac and Danny and my dog Pearl, all in the hallway. And Aidan and me are stepping over the top of them to carry the buckets to the lounge room.
I need to get a hold of Mum and Dad. I need to let them know that Ross has got fire and that it could be coming towards them. And so I rang, and eventually Danny answered, my brother Danny answered the phone and said, Beck, we're stuffed. And I go, what's wrong? And he goes, we're surrounded by fire. And I said, you're kidding? He goes, no, we're surrounded by fire. I could hear the smoke alarms, and I could hear the dogs and the kids all crying and screaming in the background, and he said, we're just stuffed. He said, there's no CFA, we're stuffed, we're completely surrounded. I said, can you get out? He said, we can't get out, we can't do anything. He said, we're stuffed. And I said, okay mate, I said, I'll let you go, just do your best. And that was it. I wished I made him give me the phone to one of the kids so that I could have at least talked to them.
I walked into the lounge room to make sure that everything was sort of all right, and had floor-to-ceiling windows, 4 of them in the lounge room, and they just all blew in simultaneously, and the fire was in the lounge room.
They were breaking and popping, and then the curtains caught on fire, which we hadn't taken down. It's another thing we had no time to do, which we knew we had to do. So once the curtains caught on fire, the smoke filled the house up, and you just couldn't breathe and see. And Aidan and me are carrying buckets of water, and we're throwing them on the windows trying to douse the fire. And then we had to get out of our own. We couldn't get the kids out. We yelled at them and they couldn't hear us. So we opened the front door and the fire was still burning. But I went out and had a look and said, come on, we've got to get out this way. And I grabbed Aidan and Jen and said, come on, quick, get out. And we yelled at the other kids, go out the back door. Go out the back door. You'll be right. Because they're all down the hallway where the back door was. And Aidan, Jenny, and we got on the front lawn and they didn't come out.
And we called and called their names, and Aidan was hanging on to me still. And then I thought I might be able to get round the side and get in through the laundry door. And I tried to run around that side, and you couldn't get through. The fire was just burning the house down.
And she was still screaming and screaming and screaming at the kids, and I'm saying, nothing we can do, sweet, nothing we can do. And she said, oh. And she started to feel the pain and with all the burns then, and they start to affect her. And with all the smoke she's taken in, she couldn't breathe.
And then I knew that I had to ring Becky to let her know, because I couldn't have that. I couldn't not let her know that the children were dead. And I don't know, Aidan just dialed the number, and don't ask me why, but we got through. And I told her.
And she said, Beck, they're all gone. And I go, what do you mean they're gone? Gone where? She goes, no, Beck, they're all gone. They're dead. The house is burnt down. I couldn't get them out. They're gone.
And she screamed and screamed and screamed. And then their phone just went dead.
In a statement made afterwards, a police sergeant said that the main street in Marysville had been completely destroyed. Quote, the motel at one end is partially there. The bakery survived, don't ask me how. Everything else is just nuked. End quote. Premier Brumby described the situation thusly, quote, there's no activity. There's no people. There's no buildings, there's no birds, there's no animals. Everything's just gone. So the fatality rate will be very high. End quote. After the firestorm passed through the Marysville area, all but 14 of over 400 buildings had been destroyed. As the Kilmore East Fire and the Murrindindi Mill Fire merged following the wind change on the evening of the 7th of February, it was renamed the King Lake Fire Complex. The complex was the largest of the many fires burning on Black Saturday, ultimately destroying over 330,000 hectares, 820,000 acres. It was also the most destructive, with over 1,800 homes destroyed and 159 people killed. Many of the people killed, not even directly from the flames. The fire front burned with such intensity that the oxygen was sucked out of the air at over 200 metres away. A total of 173 people were confirmed to have died as a result of the fires on Black Saturday. The figure was originally estimated at 14 on the night of the 7th of February, and steadily increased over the following 2 weeks to 210 it was feared that it could rise to as high as 240 to 280, but these figures were later revised down to 173 after further forensic examinations of remains and after several people previously believed to be missing were located. A temporary morgue was established at the Coronial Service Centre at Southbank, capable of holding up to 300 bodies. The Victorian coroner compared this to a similar facility established after the July 2005 London bombings. By the morning of the 10th of February, 101 bodies had been transported to the temporary morgue. The Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine stated that it could be impossible to positively identify many of the remains. On the 11th of February, in the immediate aftermath of the fire authorities estimated that as many as 100 of Maryville's 519 residents may have perished. By the 16th of February, over 150 forensic investigators were engaged in searching the ruins of Marysville. A senior lecturer in fire ecology from the University of Melbourne estimated that the fires may have been burning at temperatures of over 1200 degrees Celsius, 2190 degrees Fahrenheit. He concluded that, as a result, the remains of some people caught in the fires may have been completely obliterated. The final death toll for Marysville was later downgraded to 34, after a large group of residents who remained unaccounted for were actually located. 164 people died directly in the flames themselves. 12 died later in hospital, and 4 died from other causes including car crashes on the day, fleeing the fire. There were 164 Australians and 9 foreign nationals killed on Black Saturday. 7 of the deaths occurred in bunkers of both fire-specific and non-fire-specific design. One firefighter, David Balfour, from Gilmore, was killed near Camberville when a burnt-out tree fell on him as he was attaching a hose to the fire tanker. A total of 414 people were injured during the Black Saturday bushfires. Due to the intensity and speed of the fires, most casualties of the bushfires either died or survived with minor injuries. There were significantly fewer major burns than in previous bushfires, such as Ash Wednesday. The flames were just that hot that anyone caught in them didn't get out. Of the people who presented to medical treatment centres and hospitals, there were 22 with serious burns, and 390 with minor burns and other bushfire-related injuries. It was estimated that the amount of energy released during the firestorm in the King Lake, Marysville area was equivalent to the amount of energy that would be released by 1,500 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs. Beyond just the human loss of life in the fires, there was the enormous scale of physical damage caused to property. Over 1 million acres burnt, 7,562 people displaced or homeless, over 3,500 structures destroyed, over 11,000 head of livestock, over 98,000 hectares, nearly 245,000 acres of parks damaged or lost completely, 90% of which was national parks, 70 national parks and reserves, and they included over 600 cultural sites and historic places. Over 55 businesses were destroyed. Electricity supply was cut off to 60,000 people. The list just goes on and on. In the wake of the fires and the mounting casualty toll, there was debate about policies for dealing with bushfires and the management practices that may have contributed to them. Naomi Brown, Chief Executive of the Australian Fire and Emergency Services Authorities Council, argued that the high number of fatalities in these fires, as opposed to earlier fires such as Ash Wednesday, was partly attributed to the increased population densities on Melbourne's fringes. David Packham, bushfire expert and research fellow at Monash University, argued that higher fuel loads in bushlands led to the destructive intensity of the fires, saying that, quote, there has been total mismanagement of the Australian forest environment, end quote. In announcing that the fires would be investigated by a royal commission, the Premier of Victoria, John Brumby, suggested that the, quote, long-standing stay and defend or leave early policy would be reviewed, saying that while it had proven reliable during normal conditions and the conditions on the 7th of February had just been exceptional, Brumby said that, quote, there were many people who had done all of the preparations, had the best fire plans in the world, and tragically, it didn't save them. Fire is deadly. It's devastating, but it's also one of the most important forces at work in the Australian environment. Aboriginal people used effective fire management to burn vegetation, to facilitate hunting and promote the growth of edible ground-level plants. The use of fire by Aboriginal people was so widespread and constant that virtually every early explorer in Australia made mention of it. It was Aboriginal fire that prompted Captain James Cook to call Australia, quote, this continent of smoke. However, when control was stolen from the Aborigines and placed in the hands of Europeans, disaster resulted. Fire suppression became the dominant paradigm in fire management, leading to a significant shift away from traditional burning practices. A 2001 study found that the disruption of traditional burning practices and the introduction of unrestrained logging meant that many areas of Australia were now prone to extensive wildfires, especially in the dry season. A similar study in 2017 found that the removal of mature trees by Europeans since they began to settle in Australia may have triggered extensive shrub regeneration, which presents a much greater fire fuel hazard. Another factor was the introduction of gamba grass imported into Queensland as a pasture grass in 1942. Planted in large scale from 1983. This can fuel intense bushfires. This leads to the loss of tree cover and long-term environmental damage. The link between rising greenhouse gas emissions and increased bushfire risk is complex, but according to major science agencies, it's pretty clear. Climate change does not create bushfires, but it can and it does make them worse. A number of factors contribute to bushfire risk, including temperature, fuel load, dryness, wind speed, and humidity. The Bureau of Meteorology and the CSIRO have stated that Australia has warmed by 1 degree Celsius since 1910. And that the temperatures will only continue to increase in the future. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says it's extremely likely increased atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases since the mid-20th century is the main reason it's getting hotter. The Bushfire and Natural Hazards Research Centre says the variability of normal events sits on top of all of these factors. Warmer weather increases the number of days each year in which there is a high or extreme bushfire risk, and it limits the number of days that professional hazard reduction experts can conduct safe burn-offs. The conspiracy theories going around the news and online about how green-leaning politicians have caused this disaster, or even arson as the main cause of the fires, just reflects an increased distrust in scientific expertise, skepticism of the media, and a rejection of common sense. There is no dispute that arson is a serious problem in Australia, or that arsonists have not been active in the current bushfire season. New South Wales Police say they've charged 24 people with deliberately lighting bushfires this season. Then the media reports that as over 200 arsonists, which just simply isn't true. But that does not detract from the clear scientific evidence showing climate change is making Australia's bushfire season longer and more severe. The Bureau of Meteorology's clear advice is that climate change is, quote, influencing the frequency and severity of dangerous bushfire conditions in Australia and other regions of the world, including through influencing temperature, environmental moisture, weather patterns, and fuel conditions, end quote. Right now, it seems, Australia is feeling the full force of our ill-conceived environmental management. Australia is facing its most devastating fire season in recorded history, and it's only just started. Over 29 people are dead, including 4 firefighters. The flames have consumed more than 2,400 homes, killed countless animals and devastated a region of farms, shrubs, eucalypts, forests, mountains, lakes, and vacation spots larger than England. 26 million acres of land have been blackened in the past 4 months. Over 1 billion animals are dead, and more than 100 wildfires are still burning across the country. With the summer of the Southern Hemisphere barely underway, no one expects any relief soon. There's not much rain in the forecast. Summer has only just started. So vast and intense are these fires that they can and do create their own climate, generating winds while absorbing fresh air at ground level and causing lightning in the immense pyrocumulus clouds rising above them. Canberra, Australia's capital city, recorded the worst air quality ever measured the other day. The largest city, Sydney, has been suffering through heavy smoke for weeks, and the ash of the flames has darkened the skies over Chile and covered the glaciers in New Zealand, more than 1,000 miles away. All of this doom and gloom aside though, if there is one highlight to a devastating natural disaster such as Black Saturday, or even our current bushfire crisis, it's that it tends to bring out the very best in most people. Black Saturday claimed the lives of 173 people on the 7th of February 2009. But in doing so, it taught us valuable lessons. It brought together the spirit of the Australian community. That's what we do. We help each other out when shit gets bad. In stark contrast to the burnt-out shell of the actual physical community, the destroyed houses, the ruined schools, shops and farms, the blackened streets, bushfires bring out a sense of community, a sense of mateship. Like the old cliche of a phoenix rising from the ashes, or a young fresh eucalypt shoot rising from the scorched earth. We rebuild. We come together and form even stronger community ties. The sense of community that these fires bring out gives victims the strength they need to begin the process of recovery. As Australians, that's something we should all be very proud of. No matter how bad it gets, we don't ever stop helping each other out.
Yeah. Why are they refusing to listen? Why are these troops on a mission? Why are they shooting these victims over their view of religion? Yeah, why do we all search for love like we got Cupid's addiction? Why with politicians you can't tell the truth from the fiction? Why do we pollute where we're living? Why are these youth put at risk? And why is this ruling dominion kept us consuming this prison? Nah, 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 I won't jump through the hoops of the system. Nothing stands between you and the pursuit of your vision. I grab a loop with this rhythm, it puts the juice in my pistons to jump back, react, spit in the booth with precision. And when I'm cruising with ism, yeah, I'm deucing a spliffing. It's a B&E show, bitch, getting loose was a given. I don't want them to look back when the future is written and know we killed ourselves with nuclear fission and stupid decisions. Shit, I'd rather an asteroid do for collision and know the planet got fucked by the human condition. Sing the tune with conviction.
And all I know is the sun is shining, yet we fight all through the night while the birds are melting and the sea is rising. I don't know, so I ask them why. And all I know is the sun is shining, yet we fight all through the night. Well, if you don't know, shit, I don't know. I guess all we can do is ask them why.
Yeah, I'm an old school poet. Yeah, yo, I'm an old school poet. I cherish the ink, that cosmic cowboy that doesn't care what they think. Real magic isn't card tricks, big cribs and cars, bitch. It's making something out of nothing through this hardship. And even though that the earth is weak, we still bomb each other and idle what the churches speak. It's like this land is either run by labor or liberal, but don't get it twisted, they're the same as the criminals. So open your eyes, simply notice the issue, that we stuck to our guns without promoting the pistol. And we orchestrated the sound that we all love, split because of color but bound because of blood. So before we all blow and they sell the scene, know that the only thing that's bulletproof's my self-esteem. See, this is way beyond cash and ego tripping. It's an epic electric SO ecosystem. Grow with me.
And all I know is the sun is shining, yet we fight all through the night while the bergs are melting and the sea is rising. I don't know, so I ask them why. And all I know is the sun is shining, yet we fight all through the night. Well, if you don't know, shit, I don't know. I guess all we can do is ask them why.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad.
Solutions rising, the ice caps are melting quick.
Trust no one because fire burning.
It's an inferno in there. Solutions rising, the ice caps are melting quick.
Fuck your race riots, fuck all that shit. We are all here together in this country and fucking one. It's all about peace, love and unity. Sing it. Peace, love and unity. Sing it. Peace. And all I know is the sun is shining, yet we fight all through the night while the bergs are melting and the sea is rising. I don't know.